I want us to have this conversation now with Farah Fortune, who's the African Star Communications Director, and Tasneem Kariem, who's the event specialist with 16 years of experience in the events industry, both internationally and locally. Farah and Tasneem, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining this conversation. Maybe let's start with the effect that we have seen, the impact we have seen on social events, Farah. How big is it? How have social events changed as a result of this COVID-19?
It's been huge. It's been detrimental and such a phenomenal change to us. But I say phenomenal change because I think it's also going to help us in the way that we interact with people and how we really throw events now and how we throw safe events from now on. But it's impacted us, like you say. I was listening to you say the walk has been affected. Your sister stations events have been affected. Everybody's been affected. Nightclubs are going to be affected because, like you say, you're standing there. There's people all around. In all honesty, my personal opinion, what I've seen from what's been going on, we're not going to get back to any kind of eventing like we used to have probably till about 2022, maybe.
Oh. Are you telling me we're not going to do Joburg Day? We're not going to do DSTV Delicious Festival the way we used to?
No, it's not that we're not going to do those things. It's just that we're going to do those things differently. We're going to have, as a world, and not even as the country, as the world, we are going to come out with serious PTSD after this. About standing close to someone you don't know, about making sure that you mask. I don't know if you've seen, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, one of the ministers in France, she was going to they were having a small event and she got out of the car, and as she walked towards people she realized she forgot her mask and she absolutely freaked out. Where's my mask? They had to come, the car, there's a video going around on social media of it. And that just shows you how scared people are. So you have to take that in mind. And now you've got to see, okay, so where do we go from here? How do we change this? And how do we make the event safer even when we do go back to interacting with each other? I personally think that nightclubs aren't going to survive as much as they or aren't going to be as full as probably as they usually are. But one thing I did, and I even tweeted about this beginning or middle of last year, I said, you're going to see the rise of house parties. And this was before coronavirus, but we're going to see that. We're going to see people now have house parties rather than going to clubs because it's a smaller group of people. It's people that you know that you can say, okay, come to the gate and we'll test you in 15 minutes. We get your results kind of thing. So unfortunately, we're going to have to see that. And people have to understand that's our new norm. It's not about waiting for post-COVID. There's no post-COVID. This is our world now.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, where's going to be the fun in that when you're wearing masks and there's physical distancing and there's all these safety protocols in place, But again, maybe we need to readjust, Tasneem, to the new way of having fun and the new way of enjoying these social events, eh?
Yeah. And then also just to add on what Farah is saying also, just looking at a broader perspective across the board, not just from social event point of view, but if you look at from the meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibitions sector as well, which is called the MICE industry essentially. In particular, this sector, it attracts a lot of foreign visitors, foreign investors into South Africa. And if you look at it like the 2019 stats of about 11.4% of foreign tourism was attributed to this specific industry of eventing, and which is quite massive and quite significant in totality. And I feel as if this industry is going through a bit of a paradigm shift at the moment. And like Farah said, it looks like 2022, maybe end Q4 of 2021 going into 2022 is where we're going to start seeing a shift in, back to not just the way that things have been done pre-COVID, but also a bit differently and better as well. And what we can also call it of a social revolution of sorts, Also, we've had lots of long-awaited events, like you mentioned earlier, a few of the events with your sister radio station also having to pull off. Events that has been cancelled across the board on both domestic and an international front. in order to obviously just abide specific lockdown regulations across the board. And what we've also seen a lot of, and is also quite unfortunate, is the spike of job losses within the industry. And also closing down a lot of legacy type establishments in the region. Events venues that you would think would be going on forever and a day has now had to close their doors because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And then also in this very unusual and disruptive situation, the industry finds itself. We really need to look at balancing two priorities, I feel. On the one hand, it is crucial to uphold, obviously, the health and safety of your event attendees, the health and safety of your staff, obviously, that needs to help out and making sure this event happens. And then also the event sponsors that comes on board, the health and safety of those guys as well. And then on the other hand, I feel also that it is quite necessary to meet your financial obligations on the other hand, or at the end of the day, at very least, try to, minimize your costs on that.
Yeah. I mean, Farah, how important is creativity during this time? Because, companies, brands, and those who hold events have to be innovative and adaptive during this time. So this is an opportunity, I imagine, for those event organizers to be creative in their approach and prepare for what is our reality now as they prepare for future events.
Of course. I mean, I think one thing COVID has made us realize as events organizers generally is just that our health and safety regulations generally needed to be upgraded. And that's the one thing I've definitely seen within conferences, and I'm sure Tasneem will agree with me, just from a conference perspective and having 1,000 people in a room. I mean, it's if one person sneezes, the next person is going to catch a cold. And this is what we need to realize. I mean, if you look at how our health and safety regulations already need to be looked at. Let's just take that and look at that as a whole. Let's change that and make that safe, make it safer for us to be in a room with 1,000 people. But also mentally and psychologically, this is going to affect us. We are human beings. We want to touch, we want to feel, naturally, a lot of us, when we see our friends, we want to hug them, shake hands. Those are things that are going to need to change completely. Social distancing at events, testing for COVID or SARS or any kind of other illness at the doors. Those things need to be. It needs to be part of the innovation of events. Let's put it that way. So we're going to see a huge increase in the medical side of eventing. Sorry, there's a plane going over my house. I haven't seen that in a while. So there's going to be a huge increase in that side of eventing. The medical science of this is going to impact us hugely.
And I want to take calls from our listeners as well. Give me a call on 011-883-0702. How have your social lives been affected? And do you think you would fit in this future that we are talking about, this new way of socializing, the new way of doing events, with safety going to be very central to that? I mean, do you see yourself adapting to that? Someone says here, relax guys, a vaccine will make things normal again, but we don't know when a vaccine is going to come. That's the thing, right? And then somebody else says, I think by the time clubs open, the vaccine will be there. Oh, and can you imagine the impact on the clubs themselves? Because these are businesses at the end of the day. They didn't just operate to make sure that people are just having fun. They were businesses. They needed to make money. And if now we literally have to say clubs must wait until after vaccine, I mean, which club will still be operational at that point? This is crazy.
I mean, you have to also understand from that perspective, from a club perspective, more than most places, you can't really social distance in a club. And like you said, it's already stuffy. Some places you're allowed to smoke in, some places you're not, depending on, how, if there's a smoking section, if it's near the door. There's so many regulations in place already, and you've got to look at that. I mean, one of the reasons we've had such a huge surge in our numbers in Gauteng is because people don't want to stay at home. They want to socialize. We're so used to doing these things. It's a mindset change. You can have a vaccine that comes in tomorrow. That doesn't mean we need to be slack about how we go forward in terms of all of this. This is how we ended up with COVID in the first place. We were so nonchalant about it. I mean, you go to Asia, and for me, before COVID, it was very unusual to see someone in Asia without a mask. It's a norm to them. It's such a norm. But for us, it was something like, why are you wearing a mask? I'm not sick. Why would you do that in my presence? So we need to understand that it's now a mindset change. How do we keep ourselves going healthy forward? If you look at, in terms of the African Union, they put out a statement in April that said approximately 20 million jobs across Africa will be lost, and I think 14% of that is in the eventing industry. That's huge. That's huge. And we've got to look at that. How is this going to affect our economy? People think it's just about parties and alcohol. Alcohol brands, the fact that we're banned at the moment, they don't even get to work because they can't sponsor anything. They can't even send a bottle as a gesture to, you're not even buying it. You're sending it as a PR job. We can't even do that. So it's affecting that. By alcohol being banned is affecting a PR agency as well, because they can't send their usual media drops. How do you do all of that stuff? So the offset of eventing into other industries, it's so huge. And I don't think people are understanding the impact that this really has.
Tasneem, go ahead.
Sorry to break your word there. What you mentioned just in terms of the importance of being creative in the space also, Farah, during this time, we also need to be cognizant of the importance of being innovative and also adaptive during this time. And we need to realize that the way people are consuming brands these days, the way they're consuming specific sort of event, specific sort of media, etc., is different now than pre-COVID, right? And I strongly believe that a new crisis like this brings along a new situation, obviously, which then brings about a new normality. And in turn, I feel will bring about new opportunities, of course, right? And with new opportunities, we need to really be thinking outside of the box also and looking at global best practices of what people are doing in other markets, right? Especially from a digital innovation point of view, and also try to adapt the different markets in that sort of sphere as well. And like we all know, the world is going digital. And so from a digital innovation point of view, we should really look at countries like China, Japan, like Farah mentioned, the East the East, and then also some of the European markets, like for instance in the East, they light years ahead, right, when it comes to digital innovation. And places like in the European areas or whatever, they're hosting some crazy, amazing digital experiences that we could definitely take a leaf out of their books from a retention acquisition point of view, from a client base. And also the brands that I feel will survive the pandemic is the ones that are willing to take the risk, willing to be bold, and also just adding that little bit of human touch to it as well.
That's just incredible. Farah, one of the things we've spoken about, the impact that this lockdown has had on the events company, and I'm just imagining now that how do they get out of this situation? Because it's easy to say, well, they will have to think creatively about how they go about their business, but many of these businesses will have zero in their accounts. And I wonder if that's going to affect the kind of events that they organize henceforth, given the impact on their businesses, because that's one thing that we also have to look at, is the impact that their businesses have felt and how that's going to affect then future events. And add to that the fact that people may be a little unsure about being in crowded spaces. Even if you're promising safety protocols, I'll think twice about going to a big event that's happening at the Botanical Gardens, for instance.
You have to. Speaking from personal experience, my agency we have suffered. We had a few events lined up. When lockdown was implemented, and our clients came to us and said, it's 21 days, don't worry, we'll just move the date to later, don't worry. No one at that point realized the impact that COVID was going to have on our industry. My business has been severely affected, and we've now had to look at how do we as an agency innovate. We talk about 4IR in South Africa, yet we still, people who are going to apply for government jobs are still filling out applications on paper. So we're nowhere near where we should be in a digital perspective to be able to say we can recover from an industry like that. However, when you look at someone, I think about 3 years ago, I was in Kenya, and I was already being presented with digital exhibitions in Kenya. Kenya is for me and for Kenya is one of the countries on the continent that is so advanced in terms of technology. We really have to look at them. Besides looking at the East, looking closer to home, Kenya is extremely versed in the digital sphere. And we need to look at them in terms of how they've already been doing online and digital exhibitions from 3 years ago. So let's look at that model and how it's worked. It's worked fantastic for them. They've been able to bring investment into the country without anyone even stepping foot on Kenyan soil. How do we as South Africans do that now? We need to look at the innovation of that. However, they're going to be extreme job losses, and they're also going to be extreme losses for companies generally. If you look at something, I'll use the Sandton Convention Center, for example. Yeah. It's a venue. You go and have events there. How are they making money right now? It's empty. And when you think about it, I mean, you guys are based in Sandton. I'm sure you drive past there. That place is packed all the time. Every day there's a different eventing space. Like, they make their money from that. They also provide catering. They have hundreds, if not thousands of staff that come in there to run that place. What are those people doing right now? The job losses are phenomenal. How do we change that? Which means government needs to invest from a digital perspective and pull us up to where our neighbors are, like Kenya, and invest in us from a digital perspective. We cannot be talking 4IR and filling out papers. I'm sorry. We're just not there.
Certainly. I want to take some calls on 011-883-0702. I'm also seeing some SMSs coming through here. Someone says, Clement, I own a venue and so do my friends. And trust me, we get DMs every day asking, when are we opening? People cannot wait for the Groove to open. So it seems there are other people that are waiting for revenge partying. And another SMS here says, you know what, maybe just like nicotine and alcohol bans led to the black market product, we might see the advent of black market or underground clubs. You know, there are people that met in clubs previously underground, and maybe that's where we're heading as well. Let me go to the call now. We've got a call from who's this? Progeny Pather, who owns an events company, who's from the South African Events Council. And you guys have put together guidelines that the Department of Health has looked at. Hi.
Hi, Clement. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so the South African Events Council was formed in about March this year. Obviously, like the ladies have just been saying, our industry had come to a grinding halt, and we had to work very hard to provide guidelines to government to show them how we can organize events safely. Because I think event organizers are governed by safety generally. None of our events are able to come live without safety protocols. And these safety protocols are governed by the city safety departments wherever we host our events. So a few associations came together. There's about 12 of us right now. And we're basically lobbying for the reopening of our industry. And a start to the reopening was putting together these safety guidelines. Now, these guidelines are essential for any organizer out there right now, no matter what type of event you organize. We represent business meetings, exhibitions, conferences, live events, technical production services. You know, there's so much that goes into events. So yes, you talk about the front end of an event, but like we've already talked about earlier, there's the back end of the event in terms of the setting up and going live and the number of crew that you have on site to make these events bring them to life. There's so many considerations that come into play, which is why we put together the guidelines. And the guidelines covers everything from building up your event, planning your event, to being on-site and breakdown. Now, what we're doing this week, Thursday, the 22nd of July, if you follow the SA Events Council page on social media, you'll see that we're having our first test conference to test out the guidelines, because now we have it in paper. But it's important for us to show event organizers exactly how this will unfold in real time.
Yeah, and they can also, plan around that. Farah and Tasneem, any last words? We're just out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond there, Farah.
Yeah, just a quick one. Sorry if I jump in quickly. Just listening to the lady with regards to the safety guidelines. Even though those safety guidelines are in place, right, we also need to know that things have shifted so drastically during this time now, where a lot of people are not going to feel comfortable coming to an actual physical event. So for me, in terms of the future of how events will look, it's very much look like a hybrid event scenario where you've got people coming in from a physical point of view, the people that feel comfortable coming into an actual safety guidelines in place. And then also you've got the digital sphere, where you're going to have to ensure that from a digital perspective, people are able to dial in, to view, to interact with you as well from a digital point of view, because they're not comfortable in physical space. And now it's really just up to us within the industry, our creativity, just to reimagine how these two different realms can come together to create the next sort of generation of events within our...
And Tasneem, your last words quickly?
Yeah, that was me. That was Tasneem.
Oh, the Farah.
Sorry.
Mine is just to say, I think we need to look at this, that our lives are changing in every aspect, not just eventing, but we also need to understand that the human aspect of this is going to be really lost. And the psychological aspect of that is, how do we deal with that? Do we not interact with humans at all? Do we call each other all the time? So we need to look at how can we bring that into eventing where that's not lost, and networking sessions aren't lost, and going into a workshop with 5 people is not going to stress you out.
Yeah, look, let's hope we're going to have some answers to all of these. Farah Fortune and Tasneem Kariem, thank you so much to both of you for your